Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Modern Enterprise Architecture Meetup brought to you by FromHereOn. And today's topic, from idea to impact, accelerating the right AI initiatives. So good afternoon to those of you in Australia and New Zealand, and good morning to our early risers from UK and Europe, if you're awake. Please take a moment to introduce yourselves in the comments. Let us know where you're watching us from and what you do. I'm Jana Martens, talent and community lead here at FromHereOn, and I'll be your host for today, as usual. So in this live session, we explore how a one-day sprint bringing together leaders, practitioners, and students turned ideas into working AI prototypes. So you will hear how Barwon, Deakin University, and FromHereOn team collaborated to make it happen, and how you can replicate the moments that momentum in your organization as well. So as always, we encourage you to participate, share your thoughts, questions, or again, just a quick hello in the comments, because we want to see that you're here. So we're live on YouTube and LinkedIn, and we'll take questions from both platforms. And of course, we're trying to create a space for architect leaders to connect, exchange ideas, and grow as a community. So that's probably enough of me. So a few people saying hi, James here, Hugh's here, Max here. Don't forget to say hi. And I'm gonna pass it on to our speakers to introduce themselves. Jesse, please, we'll start with you.
Hi, Jana. Hi, everyone. And thanks for having me. Really happy to be here. So my name is Jesse McMeekin. I'm the Manager of Entrepreneurship Programs at Deakin University in Melbourne. We have campuses in the city of Melbourne and also 2 campuses in Geelong and an online campus as well. So really keen to talk with you all and share our experience working with Barwon and FromHereOn. And yeah, we're doing a lot of stuff in AI. When it comes to entrepreneurship and innovation. And so, yeah, it's going to be, I think, a really great discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, JC. Over to you, Song, please.
Hey, everyone. My name's Song Yeep. I'm the AI lead here at Barwon. Been here about 18 months and kind of come out of that kind of tech consulting space. So it's exciting to be on the customer side and be able to kind of build out some of these solutions. And yeah, really excited to talk to the team and the community around what we've done with the FO team or FromHereOn team, as well as Jesse and the Deakin team. So lots to share and hopefully some takeaways you guys can run away with as well.
Perfect. And Jack, over to you.
Great to meet you all. Yes, my name's Jack. I look after AI and data from here on. We've been doing some great work with Barwon over the last few months in the AI space, and I've got a great partnership running with Deakin as well. So yeah, looking forward to sharing what we've been up to.
Perfect. Few more people joining. Hugh saying hi to Jesse and Song. Daryl's here. Yes, we met at the Wipro last week. It's a small world of enterprise architecture. Everyone else, I'm waiting for your hello in the comments. And before we dive into the discussion, I just want to quickly share a quick poll we ran just before today's live stream. We ask you, what's really slowing down AI in your organization right now? So we ran poll only for 7 days. And here's how you voted. So, and if you didn't vote, it's your chance to vote in the comments. So do you think is really slowing down AI in your organization right now? Is it the tooling and integration, skills and capacity, data quality and governance, or leadership and priorities? And our results showing it's actually leadership and priorities. And clearly leadership clarity comes out on top. And do you think is it a signal that the biggest AI blockers aren't actually technical and more organizational? Jack, what's your thoughts on our poll results?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair actually. I think the organizations, I see AI as a very much an organizational change activity. So yeah, the leadership has to drive this. It's got to be sort of driven through to create the space for people to retrain, to make sure there's investment in data quality and governance and make sure the right tools are built. So yeah, I think that's the right order from what I can see.
Song, and from your perspective, what do you think?
Yeah, look, it's funny because it ties quite well into the conversation that we're having today in terms of priorities and that leadership play, and that's definitely one of the key takeaways that I'll talk to later on in the slides. But it's really no surprise, and I think all the technologists on the phones or on the calls and on the live stream will probably kind of nod in that kind of same vein, as it's never really a technology blocker. It's not always tech. It tends to be kind of business challenges that kind of slow things down. So AI is really no different to that.
Sure. JC, anything to add, or are you just knocking and agreeing? We need to unmute
There's definitely decisions that have to be made at executive level, but obviously it's conversations like this that are going to help us figure out what those priorities are, because there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of hype, and there's a lot of experimentation, as we're going to discuss. So these sort of things are going to help us figure out the wheat from the chaff. So
perfect. Yeah, we have quite a few people saying hi. Thank you, guys. Justin's here, Tushar's here, Vladimir's here. Thank you everyone for saying hi, and make sure to vote on the poll as well. Bisal's here. I think she was at the AI Design Day as well. Great to see you on the stream too. Perfect. People from Brisbane. Thank you guys for joining. So Jack, I guess over to you to start our today's discussion. So what problem, based on what we see across the industry, what's the real problems organization face when trying to get started with AI?
Fantastic. Yeah, let's run the water wheel. So obviously, water industry, we found a great image of a water wheel not turning, and I think that's quite an interesting analogy. So we've got water going everywhere, going over the sides. Imagine this is your investments in AI. You're trying to fill up these initial buckets, skills, capability, data, leadership, and eventually, when all those things are full enough, you gradually get some momentum happening. But that friction is pretty hard to overcome. We're finding lots of organisations struggling with that sort of organisational inertia, where lots of effort's going in, but they're not seeing a huge amount of value coming out. So I think just about the next bucket starts to fill, the wheel starts to turn. And the interesting thing about this is once it goes, then it really does go. And you get lots and lots of momentum, lots of power being generated. And obviously this was the earliest version of the Industrial Revolution. So you can see how this stuff powers your organisation. So anyway, that's a nice analogy. And great for the water industry. It was good to come back from steam engines back to water power. So yeah, that's the key thinking there. And I think lots of those themes we saw in the first sort of poll, they're all the aspects you've got to get right to load up and overcome that inertia of the organisation. Maybe move on to the next slide for me. We're seeing, whilst that's refreshing, we're seeing sort of two different starting points for lots of organisations. So there's a starting point where you've got lots of great ideas from across the business, where all these ideas are sort of building, but there's no real execution priority in place. And the second thing is lots of pilots running. So everyone running in different directions with little investment pods, trying to make things happen, but they're not all pushing in the right direction. So lots of effort being wasted and not necessarily driving towards the organization's strategic key outcomes. And that's why we created an acceleration day to try and bring all these elements together and move you towards getting the right initiatives accelerated, putting all your effort behind the right things, so things that align with your organizational strategies, things that align with your maturity at this point in time, things that align with the kind of the POCs or pilots that might have actually worked, and you want to replicate those. So, and then there's a phase two, which is then productionizing those. So as you progress towards value-adding AIs, you're taking those initiatives and really finding a way to push those through production and make sure they move the dial on your cost to serve or your operational efficiencies or any of those other things, transformational outcomes you're looking to achieve. So what I might do now is I might throw across to Song just to talk about where Barwon Water started its journey and the sort of challenges it was facing and and sort of seeds for why the design day, this design challenge was put together.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, I think it's always important to understand the why and why now for us and for Barwon. I think there's the challenge that we have as a region. We cover one of the fastest growing regions in Victoria and arguably Australia in terms of population growth. So we're set to double in size by 2050, and the economics of it means we're not going to be able to scale our current business model through humans and people to match that demand and region growth. So how do we do that? We've been looking at lots of different ways for lots of periods of time, and AI happens to be an area that we're investing heavily in now to look at how does that support that growth. And some of the stuff that Jack will talk through shortly is around, and I think demonstrate importantly, is how do we bring some of those things to life? So how do we bring some of those ideas? Bit of a free plug here, Jack, but I guess if there's any kind of hyperscalers or cloud and kind of AI vendors on the call, FO can really help your customers start to figure out what are those ideas. So, within a day, we built out about 107, 108 use cases using this tool that we kind of co-designed together and built out. I'd probably call it a BA type agent, but if we think about that broadly, 107 use cases, you would need multiple BAs over multiple days to derive the kind of content that we produced in probably less than 8 hours. So that's been really helpful, and I think Jack will talk to that shortly. And what that's really informed us is this kind of capability roadmap. Where do we need to go? What do we need to do? Where do we need to invest? And how does that inform a bit of our strategy moving forward? So if we think about those 107 use cases, we know now that 29 of those use cases are very much digital engineering requirements. How do we build some of that capability in our Azure platform using Foundry and our data fabric and a whole bunch of integration? There's 13 of those use cases that's probably sit a little bit in the middle. So there's a bit of kind of stuff that you could do by yourself. And yes, we're going to need some engineering. But then 65 of those could probably be derived using Copilot agents. And Microsoft is where we've invested a lot of our kind of energy around the capabilities of the Copilot suite. If you're a water authority in Victoria or kind of nationally, it was kind of like this natural, easy least path of resistance into an environment that we use quite heavily from a productivity stack that Copilot plugged into. So straight away from that day, we've got this kind of really clear view of where do we need to invest training, development, energy, platform engineering to start to kind of show us the way of how do we start to unlock some of this capability. But with that, I might pass back to you, Jack, to kind of bring to life, the agent we kind of designed out, built, and give that a bit of a spin for the team.
Fantastic. Looking forward to it. So yes, to talk very quickly just about what made the day work, and I'll drop in tooling for acceleration. We'll do a bit of a demo. So you can see the funnel view there on the left-hand side. So what this whole exercise was about was taking vast numbers of inputs. I had 107, 108 different inputs into the day, and then finding out how to rank and rate those ideas so that we could make sure that just a very few came out the top end of the funnel, which then could be implemented and had exec sponsorship behind them. So that was the day. Now we needed to make sure the day was also interesting. It wasn't just lots of people doing huge amounts of work in the background. We wanted to make sure that it was immersive and interactive. So we use lots of tools to help that. So I might just share one of those tools. So maybe, Jan, if you can just pivot to the other view. Great. So this, I'm just going to talk very hard looking at this one. So this is a FromHereOn version of Business Opportunity Assistant. So I'm sort of using this just to explain the business reasons why we built this app. So I wanted to skip the slow stuff, the boring stuff, like all the meetings you have to get an idea through from someone's head onto a nice sort of formatted Word document. Saving hours of meetings. Also making sure that you can be confident that what you build, what you create at the end of this is aligned with your organization strategy. So it's your idea is actually going to go somewhere at the end of this, or it can be coached towards making sure that it's it's refined in a way that gives it a better chance of getting developed. And then this idea of seeing your idea moves, to making sure that this isn't a static idea that's stored somewhere and you never moves. It's kind of getting it into a funnel so you can see it going through the gates and see it getting assessed. So this is a particular version of that agent that we reskinned using, and call it Carla for the purposes of the workshop, which was excellent. And then we effectively, the output from this was a great big long document. So you can imagine this would take several hours to build in normal circumstances, several meetings with your business analyst. So this is the output. So I'll just quickly skim back. So this is a guided workflow with a conversational agent within it. So step one, it loads up the configuration of the application, and then it's going to ask me a question around the problem statements. So I just say create problem statement, and it asks me a question about what do I want to solve or unlock. So I can just put in some text, and then it will think about that, and it will turn it into a how might we statement. So a very common statement you see in lots and lots of problem statements and requirements documents. So it's asking me if this looks right. For now, I'll just say yes, and then you send that. And what we end up then is it stores that as a static result, saying this is now the problem statement. So see how might we reduce time it takes to create position descriptions. And then we can continue through the tool. We can do vision and key features. We then built the next slide to be an interactive slide to talk about Barwon's strategic drivers. So climate resilient water, all the way down to zero waste and care for country. So you tick the things that the use case is relevant for, and then it triggers you to then talk about, well, what is the alignment and how is it going to help? And then go through a series of sections to make sure you understand who's going to own it, who the stakeholders are, and how you're going to deliver it. And the last point allows you then to export it as a Word document, and we just saw that format here. So we ended up, this approach allowed the vast number of people across Barwon Water to be able to create these use cases independently when the idea came to them, and also they could pick these ideas up and put them down again. So it worked incredibly well. I've never been in a workshop where we've been able to have so many ideas generated as pre-work. So that was a great outcome. Maybe we just pop back to the slide again now. So that's the first agent. We had a second agent as well, which actually did some t-shirt sizing as well, which was great. So it took the outputs from the first one, and it went through a series of guided steps to figure out how big that application might be to deliver. So this is what made this workshop different. It's by having agents in the workshop, sort of being used by the teams throughout the workshop. So we have Carla up front, and then we had the t-shirt sizing agent in the workshop itself, and then we had interactive boards where people were sort of voting for which ideas I thought were most applicable for now, and we had the execs on the tables sort of giving their perspective on where the strategy of the organization was going. So we had all these people together, and I think that's the key sort of idea from a big room planning type perspective. You bring everyone together, but because we had the agents and everything else assisted, we were able to get through so much more work than you normally would. So we ended up, as Song was saying, with probably the equivalent of 2 or 3 months worth of work done over the course of a couple of weeks. So we have to build up to the day and then the day itself, but I think probably it's months to weeks is what we got to there, which is a great overall efficiency saving for the organization. And Barwon now ends up with this funnel of activities ready to then work on the next stage, which is get some more resources, deploy a few agents, go through the next loop. So so that's how the day worked. I'm now going to throw across to Jesse though, because we used Deakin in quite a unique way as well on the day, which was to use some of the students to help the execs and the people on each table visualize what these ideas could be. So I'll just throw to Jesse to explain how that worked.
Thanks, Jack. It's fantastic to go through this experience with you. So Barwon has a good relationship with Deakin University already, and so it was a really nice fit. We're kind of mostly based in Geelong, so there's a kind of regional context there. And we've actually been experimenting with AI and AI prototyping at the university for about 12 months now, and I can just spot some of our students in the chat as well. I can see Ahmad's there, and one of the tutors, Scott Baseo, I think as well. So welcome, guys. Thanks for coming in. And we've been experimenting on kind of like vibe coding. And so just through our conversations with the FromHereOn team, we saw this was a really great opportunity to bring students into the mix. And so I think one of the real benefits of that was it really kind of allowed for, I think, the students to get a 360-degree view of like a public utility like Barwon Water, because what they were attending was really the planning day. So it's actually a really cool opportunity to see the students come in for something like a planning day and literally spend like a day working through and understanding all the different parts of the organization and what the priorities were. It sort of changes the model a little bit. Like, people will be familiar with the, the work integrated learning internship and the placement system, and that's like really good. But sometimes that can be a little bit manufactured. You can get a lot out of it, but you're not going to get that kind of experience that you get when you're actually at the planning day doing something as cool as an AI design day, and you've been studying and experimenting with AI for months, for most of the year. And so we brought the students in to work with the different sort of lead teams and different channel teams that Barwon had. And they kind of joined in on the tables. And actually what was really lovely to see was, as the day sort of progressed, everyone was a little bit shy and nervous at the start, but, the Barwon staff were really helpful. And you could see there was almost like a mentor-mentee kind of like relationship building sort of happening there on the tables. And it kind of like, it just sort of changed the whole day a little bit. So that was a really great outcome from the day. The other thing that I kind of want to talk a little bit about also is, I guess, this idea about how we actually use AI and how we kind of are going to place it in our sort of workplaces. How are we going to deal with this new kind of massive change coming through to different industries? And it sort of sounds a bit funny to talk about this, but like, I kind of look at AI very much like a student, like a really smart student. They know a lot of content, they have a lot of knowledge, but they lack experience, and they also lack judgment. And so this is sort of one thing about how we're actually going to use AI in our businesses. And I think we really have to look at AI as being something that is going to augment your workers, and in the same way that it augments our students, right? So we have a third-year software engineering student or a second-year master's student doing data science. But what happens when we augment them with a high capability model that can do coding and reasoning and judge and sort of work through problems? It's going to help them, but they still kind of lack that judgment and that work experience. So I think that's sort of the thing that we need to think about. How are we going to deal with that moving forwards, and how do we identify the people in our organizations that we really trust? I think that's a big thing, because those are the people you want to be working with on using AI, because the productivity is going to go right through the roof. And just lastly, one really cool takeaway from the whole day that it was a real surprise to me, and was not something that I'd ever actually thought about, but I learned on the day, was how powerful the speech to text AI transcription is. So if you sort of, to give you a background, we actually had live AI transcription going on throughout the day on all the tables, and we were transcribing all the conversations happening. And I like to sort of think about this in the way of like, human speech and human discussion is almost like the maximum bandwidth you can get with people, because like, we're talking and we're arguing and we're resolving problems, and there's some conflict, but we're working through and we're coming up with ideas, and all of that's getting recorded by this like highly accurate AI. And we were just using Microsoft Teams to do that on the day. But that was actually the basis that we used to vibe code a whole bunch of different tools and products. And that's eventually, we did sort of the end of day pitch session, where we sort of pitched the tools with the students and the Barwon staff. But that all pretty much came about from this sort of wall of text that we generated. And we used that to create new sort of tools and ideas using the skills that the students had in vibe coding, which they brought to the table. But I think it kind of makes you think about a whole bunch of different things that you can do. And we're planning on using this in our curriculum in trimester 3. It was a huge learning for us. And I think that's a model that we need to explore more. And credit to Barwon and credit to FromHereOn for actually having the sort of, like, it was a bit of a risk, like there's a high technical risk, but they kind of went for it, and it didn't come off without any issues. There were some challenges, but I think it was a really cool experiment, and yeah, there's more to sort of learn there. And so, yeah, I just want to pass on back to Song, I think.
Unmute myself. There we go. Yeah, look, I just want to extend on some of what you mentioned around kind of learnings from the day, and I think good takeaways for the people on the stream as well. You know, and Jack touched on a bit of this as well, and some of the reasons why we introduced the agent or the Kala tool. AI's surfacing challenges in organizations, you know, ourselves at Barwon, and I'm sure you guys are all seeing it in your own organizations. And these aren't often technical challenges. Yes, there'll be a few of those, but it's highlighting things that we all kind of knew but didn't really kind of face into. And that could be as simple as people writing problem statements, or not having the skills to write problem statements, or, you know, making sure that those problems align back to strategic business goals. And using these tools and this kind of you know, process that we kind of went through helped us kind of solve some of those areas. But it's, yeah, one of those things that it's not just a digital technology problem. It's AI surfacing a lot of inherent business challenges that we all have, and we're having to kind of go and address a lot of those as a result of this kind of big drive towards, you know, utilizing AI in different organizations. The other area I'd touch on is, you know, leveraging those partnerships. Obviously, we've got a great partnership with FromHereOn and Deakin. But also, if you think about the vendors that you guys are working with, whether it be Microsoft, Google, AWS, or any others, I think it's really important to continue to lean on and work closely and transparently with those partnerships to make sure that, you know, they can accelerate you, but they can only do that if they kind of are involved in these kind of conversations. Again, adding to what Jesse mentioned, I don't think we could have achieved what we achieved on the day without the team from Deakin. You know, if we think about that use case output that Jack showed earlier, which is kind of like a Word document, and then we had a session towards the end of the day where people were kind of pitching their idea. It's a very hard thing to do when it's just a bit of paper with some words on it, right? Kind of going, hey, this is my great idea and this is why you should do this. To be able to take that and turn that into a real kind of real life application with that Deakin team. And it was funny when the Deakin team, you know, we were talking to them initially, I was like, man, they're going to be so bored listening to us like whinge about our business problems. But I think, you know, them, to what you mentioned, Jesse, having that kind of business problem perspective on things was really helpful. And that was some of the feedback that I got from a lot of the students. But I think for us, you know, a lot of our people were like, man, how good was that? We could actually visualize and demonstrate what we were trying to talk about, and there's so much power behind being able to vibe code some of that stuff out. So again, leverage those partnerships that you've got to really accelerate that journey. And the last one is importantly a community of practice. I guess importantly, you know, grabbing you know, I'm one person in this organization, so you can only do so much by yourself. So how do you start to create and foster that community of practice, so that, you know, all these initiatives, and if we talk about some of those use cases being Copilot agents and very instructional based, start to build out that capability within your community, and you'll start to see the acceleration of different parts of your organization using these to basically drive more productivity or drive efficiencies in their teams. So, Jan, I might pass back to you to close that out.
Thank you, Song. Guys, we'll take some questions from the audience as well. So if you have any questions, please feel free to just put the comments on LinkedIn or YouTube, and we'll see your questions on the stream. So we'll have time for a few questions. And before we jump to the questions, I'll pass it on to Jack to share some main, takeaways from the whole design day and from our today's discussion.
Great stuff. So I'll just recap again what the day was all about. So it was one funnel that we were setting up to take 107, 108 use cases in which we generated over a couple of weeks with the team. So they got Carla in their own time. They built out their use cases, which was so much fun for them to be able to see these things getting done. Then we came together on the day with multidisciplinary teams on each table, which was superb fun as well, because you had the perspectives of sort of the AI enthusiasts, we had some digital people, we had some students, we had the execs all together. And through that process, at the end of the day, we whittled those ideas to one per team. And that was pitched with the assistance of the Deakin team, who then vibe coded those solutions up so there was actually something to see. So these were like semi-working prototypes that were created over the course of an hour and a half. And they then allowed us to do a pitch event at the end of the day where everyone was able to see the ideas and then vote for what they thought the best aspects were. So different things that were important, like which was the most sort of applicable to Barwon's key strategic objectives and things like that. So we ended up with a single funnel, and that creates control, but also creates pace, because by reducing the number of things you're doing, you stop getting log jammed, and then things you do want to do, you can move much faster with. So that's a really great outcome from that. We obviously then, the central part of the day was we used AI everywhere we possibly could. We used AI to collect the initiatives. We used AI transcriptions in the sessions themselves. We used AI to do midday little videos of how things were going. We used AI to help with the pitch presentations at the end of the day. So it was a AI infused thing, which also helps I think the execs to quite a large degree understand all different facets of AI and how it can be used day to day, because all of a sudden you're immersed in this full day long thing where all these different aspects of AI are on show. And you've got the students there as well, kind of showing what the next sort of set of skills might need to be for the emerging generations. So we did all of that. And the key thing that we saw was that by using tools to transform traditional approaches like creating documents, you can radically reduce the amount of time you spend in doing that. So you can therefore do more important, higher value things like making decisions and ensuring you understand the context of what you're trying to do. And I think the last thing is clearly that AI is a team sport. I think it's an organizational change thing, as I said right back at the very start. And you've got to bring everyone together if you're going to make progress with it. It can't be just a technology thing. It's certainly not just a top-down leadership thing. It's what we found was some of the best interactions came from the business experts talking with the technologists, talking with the execs, and having that rounded view of the problem and thinking where we're going to start, where the key value would lie. So that's kind of the day, and I think we've got some great collateral. I'd also say last week we ran a vibe coding. A couple of weeks ago we ran a vibe coding webinar as well. If you're interested in what that is, this is a brand new term to you, check out the webinar from a couple of weeks ago. And I'll throw back to Jana just to take some questions.
Perfect. Yes, so the webinar is in our YouTube channel, so you can check it out there. And we have a blog as well, so I'll share it in the comments so you can check out the previous discussion. Yes, let's jump into a few questions. We have some time. Scott is asking, what AI tools apart from Copilot are most excited for and keen to experiment with and implement in Barwon Water? I guess apart of the Copilot, what else impressed you? Song, that's a question for you.
Hard question without trying to plug every other vendor out there. Look, Scott, our predominant focus at the moment is Microsoft, and I think I look at that in two parts. And one is this productivity enhancement. There is a huge amount of investment in the Microsoft Copilot side. So if we think about a traditional Office 365 user and the Copilot functionality, that will empower them, ultimately our business users, to increase productivity and improve business performance just through using some of those tools. We've also got our Azure footprint. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're excited to continue to explore around the kind of AI tooling within Foundry and all these other things that we can start to leverage. One gap I am seeing at the moment with that Microsoft ecosystem, which we're exploring, is workflows. So one of the things and there's lots of vendors out there, N8N or Glean or all these others, but there may be an opportunity to explore how do we start to enable the business to create workflows through natural language, as opposed to the current iteration of Power Platform, which is still quite developer heavy, in my opinion anyway. So look, from a tools perspective, we're still very invested in making sure we maximize the use of Copilot and get some benefit out of that first, before we kind of introduce too many other tools.
Makes sense. There's a big question from Mac here. I don't know if we can give like a quick example. But to give some context to the type of solution, it'd be great to elaborate one of the example initiative problem statement, the solution brief, and the t-shirt sizing and the vibe coded demonstrator. Do we have some examples?
I can definitely give some context and some more examples to that piece, Jana. I probably can't show the vibe code. I think the vibe coded stuff was kind of something we iterated on the day and then kind of blew away. So won't be able to show that out, but it's definitely one of the focus areas for one of the use cases is what they're calling a nighttime flow monitoring. So how do we detect leak anomalies between a certain period of time? And it's hard to sometimes detect leaks during the day. It's very hard to manage those usage spikes, especially in our region. With Great Ocean Road, you've got tourist visitors, all that kind of stuff. So the usage through the day is very hard to predict. So the idea behind one of those use cases, how do we measure nighttime flow? So between a certain time and a certain time, and this is traditional ML models, right? This isn't so much what I guess we're a lot of the marketing spinners are at Gen AI at the moment, as opposed to traditional AI. And I kind of look at all of it in one big bucket of how do we improve the performance of our organization using these tools. But yeah, this is using some traditional ML models. How do we start to take those flow inputs from our SCADA systems and then start to look at historical trends? And you would think as a water authority and lots of utilities, we have some of that stuff, and we do at a kind of at a very kind of basic level using those SCADA systems we've got. But how do we start to apply some ML over that? And then importantly, how do you potentially throw an agent in front of that as well to start to be able to query why those anomalies are happening, what are some ideas, and kind of using that from that generative point of view to ideate from. So that's probably the one that comes to mind. There's lots of use cases that probably lots of people are talking around, which are very kind of traditional. Traditional is the wrong word because it's kind of quite new in this space. But surfacing up policies, so like a policy agent where lots of organizations have lots of policies, lots of legislation around how they should and shouldn't do things, gifts, benefits, hospitality, all that kind of stuff, and surfacing that all behind an agent. That's something that's really easy to do that the guys are kind of running with and piloting already, so that any employee can kind of query this agent as opposed to go to an HR team or a payroll team for policies that are typically sitting there, but no one really wants to read 300-page documents. So hopefully that answers some of that.
Yeah, you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, because that was the example I was going to bring up as well, Song, and like just to give some context behind that, because I was actually on that table for a little while with those Barwon staff, and I mean these were like the guys from, I think they were Smart Infrastructure, or no, I don't even know if it was, I think they were from, these were the boys that were driving the trucks.
Asset team. Yeah.
And they were like high vis. They had the King G shorts and the steel cap boots. And they were in here with the HR team and the asset delivery team and the smart team and whatever. But they were talking, and we were recording this conversation the whole time. And they brought up about this night flow sort of idea that someone had using one of the tools that FromHereOn had done earlier. But ultimately, when you inquired with them, so like what's the story behind this tool? And then they gave us this big long story about how there was an underground leak in the Mornington Peninsula, and eventually this led to soil erosion. Seems like you've lost my camera there. Soil erosion. But ultimately what happened was we used the AI to sort of ideate on this, and it helped us figure out what a product spec could be that we could do a quick prototype on, and then it sort of took a life on its own. So it's sort of like, it's not the guys or the girls in the, you know, the trendy kind of like creative studio with the whiteboards and the, you know, the texters and the post-it notes. What I found fascinating was like, you could come out with these amazing like solutions by just talking to subject matter experts and recording it and then going from there.
Perfect. Jason, there's a few questions for you while you have a talking stick. The question from Hugh, how important was the choreography to keep momentum with such a large group, and what should we change next time?
Oh, well, personal learning for me, and the students will laugh here, is give them proper instructions about where to park their car so they don't get parking fines, because some of them had a pretty bad day for them, pretty expensive day. No, but like, I think we were in conversation for a long time, and we went through a bit of a shortlisting process, so on our side as well, and like the most important thing to us was that we had really engaged students that were really keen to have that industry experience. And so we put together like our A team of students that came down. But I think on the day it was really good. You know, I think maybe next time it could be another thing to maybe do a few more introductions to the students earlier so that we can kind of get through that. But I think, you know, the Barwon staff were really, really helpful. Probably, I think if we were going to do something that was very focused on this sort of prototyping type stuff, maybe we might actually do these sort of smaller conversations that we record and we just throw problems. So we actually just come with loads of problems. We throw them at the teams, we record them, and then we go off and we workshop those. So it might just be a little bit more specific. But one of the things, yeah, I mean, what we learned on the day was like, that is something that you can do in the future. And we're actually going to be doing that with our students on like weekly scrums and things like that. So that's maybe what I might consider.
Yeah. Jason, there's a whole discussion in the comments as well about your comment of the AI not having experience and being a smart student. And I think it was just a few comments about also that the experience information is there, but the system needs to be set up and utilize it correctly. But then it's disagreement in the comments as well.
Yeah, I saw that. No, that's all. That's
Yeah,
great.
so,
That's good. It's good conversation. So don't get me wrong. Like I appreciate the exponential like runaway that we're seeing at the moment. Yeah, Gemini 3 Pro just came out and it's kind of blowing everyone away. So I do understand that the LLMs that are emerging now have, you know, I guess like experience and knowledge, but the sort of like the comparison I'm doing with a student is like, just like our students that might be like an A+, you know, HD software engineering student, they don't know about that situation out at the Mornington Peninsula. They don't understand the context of like why that was a problem and how that actually happened, because there's a lot of things that a lot of information about that problem that's probably not in the training data, right? It's like what people know as they're kind of as they're sort of in the sort of middle of their work, right? And so that was one of the things that I kind of meant about that. And I think that we have to value that experience and that judgment, because AI is going to be a really powerful multiplier. But there's so much that we can learn from the people that use it. And I wonder if in 5 or 10 years' time, we're going to see, you know, organizations and businesses that managed to retain those people, retain that knowledge. They didn't just sign up to the OpenAI workforce replacement program. They managed to hold on to those people, whether that's going to be like a really big point of difference in the future, because it might end up being that everything becomes quite generic and samey, but the organizations that still have those people with judgment and experience are the ones that are going to really thrive. And they're going to beat their competition because they're going to move with AI as opposed to being replaced by it.
On a different topic, if any students who get a fine on the day listening to this live stream, message me. I will reimburse your fine. So I'll wait for your comments. The There's quite a big question here from Giovanni. Hi all, connecting from Sydney here. I've developed tools like Color and my experience was mixed. Some of the content generated was on point, exactly what I wanted, but getting rid of all the fluff AI slope was an extremely frustrating process and often brought me to the question and created even the good content to make the whole document flow better. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I might help with that. So yeah, we went through a big learning process with this. So what we found was by building an application with every question with deep pre-prompts behind it and feed forward from the previous one, we're able to keep the LLMs on track. And I think that was the key here is we found that traditional sort of ChatGPT context windows, they get a little bit confused over time. They start dropping specifics that have been mentioned maybe 3 or 4 interactions before. So it did take a bit of work though, but we found that putting that extra effort in, that pre-prompting in, really did help. And we're talking substantial pre-prompting here, not just a few lines. We're talking hundreds of lines of text to make sure that each interaction is quite specific. But I think the other thing was, the other interesting thing about it is it never asks the same question twice either when you're doing those chat interactions. So you do get slightly different perspectives, but I think it was still highly effective at drawing out the key concepts from the users, and we ended up with high quality outputs. I think even though maybe there's an opportunity to increase the precision of that work, given where we were, which was going from very low base to sort of 80-90% there, we were really happy with that. And then I think the second bit, which you've made a point in this text, is we then made sure that it was a Word document, so you could then go back in and re-edit it afterwards. So if you wanted to add some more context or you wanted to change something that was in there, that was all possible rather than this thing being 100% AI enabled. So it was kind of working in assistant mode rather than doing mode, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a sentiment across a lot of those kind of questions and conversations that we've all had, and the way we're looking at AI here at Barwon is very much an amplification of people's skill sets. It's not a replacement of any people, if anything. You know, I kind of talked about that at the start. Our region is growing, so we will continue to grow, but we won't be able to double our headcount when the region doubles. We'll hopefully increase it a small amount. So, and we'll do that through this kind of extension of amplification using some of these tools. So there is very much the need for human in the loop. I know there's questions about tooling and all these kind of things, and again, very much important parts of it. But yeah, it's how do we take these tools and kind of enhance what you guys can already do and kind of extend on that to the gaps that you have.
Yeah, maybe just a few more questions quickly. I know we're running out of time, but sort of similar question from Vikram. How did you elevate benefits of those AI use cases and ensure alignment of those with the rest of the architecture decisions?
Good question. And I think the second half of that question is still an ongoing conversation. So how do we tie those benefits and those use cases to specific strategic goals? And I think, Jack, you covered off some of that. So one of the steps of the use case agent was forcing people to think about, within our strategic objectives for 2030, we have what we call wind chimes. So these kind of key things that we want to deliver on. How does your use case tie to that? And then how does the idea of your use case deliver value or return to that kind of wind chime? So that again structured our approach to ensure that we had these outputs that kind of tied to where we want to go. In terms of the rest of our architecture decisions, it's like I said, it's still an ongoing kind of area. So how do we not introduce a whole bunch of technical debt and just kind of bring in a whole bunch of things if we don't need to? Hence that kind of current lens of how do we continue to invest to a point. And our journey is probably 4 or 5 months old with the Microsoft stack we have before we continue to extend out into just kind of buying additional tools. There's also the ongoing growth of AI tooling being baked into the software that we already buy. So if we've got if we're using Confluence or we're using, different suites of tools for finance systems, if they're having these tools baked into them, do we need to recreate that stuff, or should we try to tie that use case to the tooling that we're already potentially paying for? So it's an evolving space, and it's evolving pretty rapidly. the moment because everyone's coming out with a new AI feature on a daily basis at the moment.
And here we go. Charles is here, the Barwon Water employee here. The business has really supported its employee with AI tools, especially through Copilot. I'm always looking forward to making the most of these opportunities to learn and, most importantly, to use these tools to help improve the business efficiently. Great discussion. Looking forward to the next one. There you go. Some song supporters here. Thank you, Charles, for your comment.
Yeah, I'll give you some money later, Charles. Thank you.
You plan the extra support. Thank you. No, thank you, Charles, for your comment. I think maybe just the last question, the big question from Hugh here. How does discussion continue along the team at Barwon, and what are the concrete steps that are coming from this now? Did you make some concrete steps, Song?
Yeah, and like I said earlier, Hugh, there's a lot of momentum behind some of this, and yes, there's a big drive for use cases, and there's typically you'll see in your organizations as well this kind of drive for how do we get return really quickly, but there's also this underlying area that we need to solve around security and governance. So there's multiple streams that you're having to think about and deliver on at the same time. So right now the focus is around how do we ensure that as we bring these use cases to life, we've got the right governance frameworks in place, we've got the right security lens and observability across what the agents are interacting with and what they're able to do and not do, and what data systems they're talking to. So there's a huge amount of kind of pre-work, and I think one of the comments from one of the streamers earlier was on that, right? How do we make sure that you've got all the right tooling in place? So there's a huge amount of engineering there, and then coupled with how do we make sure that we're investing in those right areas that are going to kind of maximize return. So doesn't quite answer the question exactly, but yeah, there's lots of kind of streams running, and continually working with our partners to figure out where can we accelerate, where do we need to accelerate as well.
Perfect. Maybe just squeeze in a really quick question from Jesse, so probably the last one. Jesse, what advice would you give to someone who wants to learn and apply AI based on this experience and your learnings?
Oh, yeah, good question. Thanks, Scott. I think there's so much information bombarding people at the moment about AI. You really just have to kind of like immerse yourself in it and start using the tools. I'm a bit of a social media tragic. I spend too much time on social media, but like the benefit of that is I'm sort of always getting like information about what's new and what's happening. And as soon as I see a new tool, I often just go and try it. I think probably one of the other things too is there is a little bit of a gatekeeping thing at the moment with AI tools. There are some tools that are mostly free, like you can get free versions of ChatGPT and Gemini and others. But if you really want to extend yourself, most of these tools are about $25 to $30 a month, thereabouts. And so you have to kind of use, you can really sort of change the way you use them if you're on those sort of higher tier plans. That being said, I don't want to plug Google, but Google does have a lot of really interesting free things you can use, particularly the Google AI Studio. And that's what we used on the day. Everyone's got a Gmail account so they can use it. But you just have to start using them. And I think the hard thing about this from a university point of view also in terms of how we're teaching students is there isn't actually a lot of academic literature on this at the moment. It's so new, it's so fresh that we're actually having to kind of sort of make it up as we go. And we're trying to just get the students immersed in using the tools so that they can kind of figure it out for themselves, because ultimately our students are actually the people that you're going to be hiring in 2 to 3 years' time. So I guess it's a question back to, anyone that's in that work. Other things is start thinking about what those job titles are now, because these students coming through have these, interesting, really amazing capabilities, but we don't know what those jobs are going to be. I guess it's up to you to create them.
Yeah, Daryl saying Opus 4.5 released today too, so it's only something released every day. And I think Jesse, it's probably the whole another conversation about that upcoming talent and how organization actually going to deal with that and what sort of roles will be created. I think it's a great topic for another live stream. And on that great note, I'm probably going to wrap up our today's session. Great discussion. If we didn't answer your question, don't get too upset. We'll answer it in the comments, and you can always message us directly as well. And I give a few announcements on what actually happening. Today was actually the last stream for 2025, but don't get too upset because there are 2 more face-to-face events happening before Christmas. So we actually doing our big networking event in Melbourne, an exclusive after-work gathering to celebrate end of the year with fellow architectural thinkers. So that capacity is limited for this event. So if you still want to attend next week, so make sure to message me directly, and I'll let you know if the spaces are still available. And if you missed out on the event on the 2nd, don't get too upset because we'll be Women in Architecture event on the 10th of December as well. We are proud to sponsor this event, which is perfect to anyone exploring and growing their career in architecture space. And also, we restart our online series from February next year. So keep an eye on our meetup group and LinkedIn post. We have several new topics lined up, including the growing influence of AI across different industries, with especially a lot happening in the higher education, as Jesse probably can relate to. And we will be excited to dive deeper into those conversations next year, how AI changing the higher education space. Also, obviously, just remind you that, yes, we have a meetup group where you can see all our upcoming events. So make sure to join. Depends if you're Australia, New Zealand, or UK. So there's a separate groups for each country. So if it's a face-to-face events, they only post in one group. Obviously, if you're LinkedIn user, make sure to follow us on LinkedIn as well. And of course, if you are looking for exciting new opportunity in enterprise architecture or AI architecture, the new roles coming up, feel free to connect and message me on LinkedIn. And if LinkedIn messaging isn't your thing, you can always reach out to us via email, talent@fromhereon.com, or check out our career page. Again, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you. A lot of thanks coming through the comments. Thank you, guys, and I'm sure it will be more sessions like this coming up. Keep an eye, and I will have a great Christmas if I won't see you in Melbourne Drinks. And I'll see you in 2026. Everyone can say bye.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
Oh, puppy.